Gita kirtans too.
I missed it.
Time to revamp Friday night.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, maybe later this year.
Definitely.
Good.
Yeah. Friday night kirtan.
Why not?
Yeah.
Kirtan talk or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe purely introductory.
Yeah, sounds great.
Like a preaching one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good. We'll put it on the list to do, on the to-do list. At least give it further consideration and planning.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually thinking about it the other night. It'd be so nice.
Really, yeah.
Friday as well.
That'd be good, yeah. Hi. Hare Krishna. So you're not new here today?
Sorry?
You're new here today or not?
I've been a couple of times.
You've been a couple of times.
Yeah.
What should we talk about today? Is this one working or not?
Yeah, that's like for live. This
Oh.
is just like for here. But
Oh, okay. Oh.
just a bit louder, that's it.
I found quite a nice topic, but it's another question.
It's another question.
It's not a question.
Oh, Jai Gurudev, Hare Krishna. Yeah, okay, go for
It's a
it.
nice topic, but
Yes, a prompt.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about in the kitchen this idea that like you view the world through your consciousness.
Right.
So whatever you see and how you see it depends on to what extent you've aligned yourself to a particular ideal or practice. And it's like sometimes we go through that in life where all of a sudden something has come on our path and then we see it everywhere.
Mm.
And so it would be lovely if you could speak on that topic with regard to our spiritual practice and how we can actually like see more of the divine world in our environment because it's everywhere. It's just depending on our consciousness.
Mm. Yeah.
A counter thought to that also is how human beings tend to gravitate towards the negative. We tend to see the fault, right? And we tend to see that which is taking us down. How to align ourselves to the positive.
Well, yeah. It's a relevant topic, and it's a broad topic as well. The Gita has the saying, Atmavan manyate jagat. Atma meaning oneself. Manyate jagat. So oneself sees jagat, the world, through the filter of one's mind. Atmavan manyate jagat. So depending on one's state of mind, one perceives the world. So one perceives the world according to who they are, how they are. So, for instance, a person, an insecure person, will see the world full of threats. A money-hungry person will see the world full of money-making opportunities. Will view people in terms of how much money they can make from that person. A lusty person, how much sensual enjoyment they can get from that person. A hungry person, where there's food, what sort of food or nourish, etc. So depending on one's state of mind, so they see the world through the lens of that state of consciousness. And thus it's also said in the Gita that one's mind can be one's best friend or one's most ferocious enemy. Because of that fact that our very interaction with the environment is determined by our state of mind or our perception of the environment, which, for all intents and purposes, is our reality. That is conditioned, that is coloured. Its nature is given as a reflection of the nature of our mind. So taking care of the quality of one's mind is of utmost importance in determining one's reality. And of course, this applies not just in spiritual practices, but also in, say, normal prosaic, mundane affairs. Even if one has ambitions to make wealth or be successful by normal measures of success, then anyone with a idea of a level of knowledge in such an area will tell you that your state of mind is imperative. Your state of mind will make or break you. So the same applies on the spiritual path. If a person's consciousness is conditioned in a way that they see the world as a place of exploitation, where they can take from the environment to consume for their own purposes, for their own pleasures, then that is going to be work against their spiritual interest. But if their mind is in such a way that they see items of this world as something to be offered in love, then that, of course, is going to work in their favor spiritually. And it's said again in the Gita that the mind can be covered by three basic gunas or flavors, qualities, that the material environment is separated into three distinct flavors of energy or types of energy. Right? And these are known as sattva, rajas, and tamas. And they have different vibrational frequencies. So these frequencies, they cover the mind. And although they are considered distinct categories, still there is areas of overlap. When one moves from one to the other, there's one fades out and the other fades in. So there's areas of overlap. And each one has its distinct vibration, distinct color, distinct sound, etc. They can be categorized that way. But also a distinct core quality, energetic quality. And these qualities cover the mind of a person who is living or interacting, culturing that energy in their life. So what are the natures of these three distinct energies? That everything, all phenomenon, all activity, everything that goes to comprise this world, all objects, persons, pastimes, activities, everything that we can see, hear, touch, experience in this world, both physically and mentally and intellectually, is covered by one or more, or a permutation of these three known as gunas, guna, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So the lowest of, and so what are these distinct qualities? One is tamagun, means stasis, or something that is static. And when it's static, it is not moving and evolving. When it's static, it's liable to break down. So tamas is the quality of destruction. It is the quality that breaks things apart. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it's necessary to have breakage in order to have a renewal of life. Hello, Hare Krishna. No, he wants prasad, not philosophy. So There are three basic categories of vibration which cover all phenomenon, persons and objects, living, non-living, in what is known as this world we live in. In fact, not just this world, but all of material creation. So, tamagun is the energy of that causes things to break down. And it causes stasis, and it causes an absence of evolution and dynamism. So everything that breaks or inhibits and shrinks is under the influence of tamagun. So a person that sees no prospect in life, a person that's suffering from depression, is unfortunately under the influence of tamagun. Or a person that harms themselves, or a person that gets caught up in addictions, things that have a destructive impact in one's life. That's tamagun. So, around a person that's immersed in tamagun, everything breaks down. Their health breaks down. Their finances break down. Their relationships break down. Their mental health also breaks down. And, of course, you cannot cultivate spiritual health either under the influence of tamagun. Everything is breaking down. The next phase or energy is known as rajagun. So tamagun is cold in nature. Cold must constrict. It's cold, it's dark, and it's constrictive. Rajagun is opposite in nature. It's hot, and heat expands. It moves. It has ideas. It has ambitions. It has goals. It's constantly transforming. So Rajagun is kinetic energy. It's not static. Now it's moving and it's seeking something. But it's never satisfied because it can't stop moving. There's no balance. So Rajagun, although it's inspired and can reveal itself, express itself with high optimism and you could say ideas such as goal setting and a sense of accomplishment and growth and achievement, it's never satisfied. A typical example of Rajagun is someone that spends their life chasing greater and greater amounts of money. They may have optimism. There's a certain awareness in Rajagun because it's expansive. It's not contractional or whatever. Contractive, whatever. But it's the opposite of something that contracts. It expands. So there's awareness. A person has awareness of what they should eat or how they should look after their body and their health. And how they can make money and innovative ways of growing and increasing and etc. But the awareness is not complete because it does not know how to actually settle enough to be satisfied, to be happy. So that's the nature of kinetic energy. It must move. It's constantly moving. So a classic example of someone who is pursuing greater and greater amounts of money. Rajagun, it must constantly expand and get bigger. The economies of the world are ruled by Rajagun. So Rajagun, like any energy expansion, must expand and then contract and expand and contract like this, which means that as a person chases their goals, they realize that with the accomplishment of each goal, it's never quite enough. So they expand, they reach the goal, there might be a disappointment, contraction, but then a new goal appears. So, chasing money, a person can say that they may set a goal of, let's say, 10 million pounds, and I'll be happy. And you can almost be guaranteed that once a person reaches that threshold of wealth, they're not going to be happy. It'll be 20 million, and then there'll be 100 million, then it'll be 1 billion, etc. So the nature of chasing money is of the nature of Rajagun, that enough is never enough. So although Rajagun does not come with the negativity and breakdown of Tamagun, it comes with a lot of wasted energy. It's typical of the mirage in the desert phenomenon. Rajagun has a thirst, and you see something that will seem to quench your thirst, offer the possibility of quenching your thirst, and you chase that, but it never quite materializes. So the mirage is constantly on the horizon, as we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. So this is the nature of Rajagun, where the money that is offering, seems to offer, it has a very real appeal to offer satisfaction, fulfillment in life, but it never does it. You always need a little bit more, but that little bit more never delivers. So this is Rajagun, a constant chase. Like a good example, and this applies to everyone. This is one example, quoting one person, Rockefeller, a very wealthy financier, industrialist of earlier last century, and perhaps one of the first billionaires in the world. And as a very old man, someone asked him, he said, when are you going to stop trying to make money? You have so much money. You've got enough money to pretty much feed everyone in a country, to maintain a whole country by yourself. And you'll keep it all. It's just for you. When are you going to stop trying to make more of it? It seems ridiculous. And he said, yeah, but just a little bit more, and then I'll be happy. Just a little bit more. And so he passed away while still trying to make that little bit more. So this is Rajagun. The person is not collapsing in on themselves like Tamagun, but the person is also far from living an ideal, satisfied life. So many of what we see in today is considered progressive and healthy and successful. This is all Rajagun. And what is considered an anomaly, and we try to cure it, is Tamagun, mental ill health, poverty, and whatever. There's a long list of various ills that are part and parcel of today's society. Whereas the good things, wealth, dynamism, chasing goals, becoming successful, that's Rajagun. So this is glorified in today's world. And then the third, now Rajagun has its inherent pitfalls. As mentioned, a person can spend their whole life chasing something that never satisfies them. This is Rajagun. And along the way, they may meet with great frustrations. In fact, it's inevitable. Because if something can't satisfy you and you're constantly chasing it, you're going to meet with frustrations and disappointments. So then the third level of operation is known as Sattva Gun. Sattva means balance, harmony. So with Sattva Gun, you have a balance between what? A balance between stasis and dynamism. Balance between the static and the kinetic. So you have just enough movement going forward and just enough stability holding you back. So there's inspiration, but there's also stability. The difference between one sort of expression is of this is a Sattva Gun person. If they're working to accomplish a goal, they might meet with failure or meet with a block or an obstacle. Then one or two times they will repeat the process, and if they're met with a block, failure again, they'll realize that it's not meant to be. But a Rajagun person will push and push and push and push until they get what they want. And so finally I got it. I was successful. But it's against what the natural harmony of the environment had in store for them. So they'll push and push and push until they get a result. That result, of course, will have an effect which a Sattva Gun person will have avoided by not pushing the environment. Instead, it's a balance, it's a harmony with the environment. So a Sattva Gun person will have just enough, you could say, negative and just enough positive in their life. A Rajagun person will have too much positive. Yeah, everything is great, positive, positive, positive. But you're ignoring the realities of what this world is. You cannot stay so positive. because everything has an end point. Very positive and optimistic about, your physical health and the physical body, like a person like sculpting their body in the gym, eating a very healthy diet, very optimistic about it all. But that optimism is actually a sense of ignorance, because you're investing so much of your precious, conscious time, your life, into something which has to go at a certain stage. Equivalent to a person investing so much of their time and energy into their vehicle, into their car. You have to give your car some amount of energy and time and attention. But too much, and it becomes a problem. So it's the same with the body, which is essentially a vehicle. A Rajagun person will be obsessed with their physical health and obsessed with growing physically and everything else to do with the resources of this world, financially, in terms of status, etc. But that all gets taken away. Whereas a Sattvagun person will understand the temporary nature of this world. They will give just the right amount of attention to the body, to the health of the mind and the body. But not that it gets in the way and detracts from the time and energy they give to their spiritual well-being. So when one's mind is flavored, infused with sattva-gun, it's only from that place that they can approach going beyond these gunas. Because sattva-gun itself is not capable of giving complete satisfaction. It is the best of a bad bargain. But from sattva-gun, a platform is achieved from which one can enter the spiritual domain of consciousness. Because one is no longer chasing madly material goals. And also no one is no longer falling to bits and deeply wallowing in the negative, which is tamagun. So no one is wallowing in the positive and no one is wallowing in the negative. But they have a proper balance of positive and negative. This is sattva-gun. And various philosophies around the world describe this in their own way, in their own languages and terminologies. Yin and yang, positive, negative. You see the symbol of in the Tao, in the Tao doctrine, you have a symbol of yin and yang. It's a circle, and it has positive and negative there. And if you can achieve a balance of that, then you're considered on a platform which is desirable, from which you can grow spiritually. So this is sattva-gun. It's another way of explaining sattva-gun, where everything is in balance. You have a balance of positive and negative. And this positive and negative is ultimately a reflection of what takes place in the spiritual world. In this material world, the positive and the negative is known as Shiva and Shakti. So the yin and yang of the Tao, the balance of that. Sattva-gun here is balance of the Shiva and the Shakti. So also represented as the sun and the moon, we can say, or the masculine and the feminine. And when that balance is achieved, then one can attempt to go beyond the duality of those two things, the essential duality of this world. Although that duality is a reflection of spiritual duality. And that spiritual duality is ultimately seen in the Krishna conception as Radha and Krishna. Negative, positive. As one of our gurus, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, describes it in kind of archaic language, the predominating moiety and the predominated moiety. It's language used in the by Saraswati Thakur in the Brahma Samhita. Moiety is like, it's old-fashioned language, but moiety means half of something. So the predominating moiety, referring to Krishna, means positive. And the predominated moiety, referring to Radharani, means negative. So it's just another way of saying positive and negative. And our book, the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, says that Radha Krishna ekatma dui dehadari anonyo vilasa rasa ashvadanakari. Radha and Krishna are one Atma. So the positive and negative exist as one person. But they have separated eternally into duality. in order to exchange loving pastimes. So the Krishna conception is that reality orbits around these loving pastimes, positive and negative, Radha and Krishna. And although the positive and negative in this world is a reflection of that in the divine world, in the spiritual world, it is not capable of offering up real substantial satisfaction, as it's a reflection. It's not the real substance. But the only way to go beyond the reflection is to stop chasing it by indulging wholly in the negative, wholly in the positive, but instead to try to achieve a sattvic balance. And from there, you can enter the real world, which is also a jewel. But there's no imbalance in the duality of that world. There is no exploitation. Shiva and Shakti, positive, negative. All life in this world comes from a combination of positive and negative. In Jyotish, in astrology, it's seen as the sun and the moon. Traditionally, in astrology, the rishis of ancient India, they were using mainly just the sun and the moon, because those are the essential factors, the positive and the negative. Masculine, feminine. Mother, father. So the union of Shiva and Shakti produces new life, produces this world of what we know. Maya and Shambhu, and all of the phenomenon in this world are produced, including ourselves. So to deal with this requires a renunciation or a realization that if one identifies with the positive, then they attempt to exploit the negative. And the negative is also searching out the positive for balance. But each of these tendencies produces a reaction. An equal reaction, but an opposite. Equal but opposite reaction. And this is known as karma. When the positive attempts to find balance by pursuing the negative, it produces a result opposite to its nature. Because reality is a mix of that positive and negative. So when the positive pursues the negative, but ultimately it finds itself. Because in this world they're one and the same thing. So it's looking for some satisfaction, but it doesn't find it, finds its opposite. And the same applies. If the negative is searching out the positive, some kind of fulfillment, it gets an opposite reaction to what it is attempting to search for. So striking that balance is very important, that sattva-gun balance. And from there, if one's mind is absorbed in that sattvic energy, then they can see this world really for what it is, as this interplay of positive and negative. When one searches for some happiness in this world through a particular object, they find in it ultimately its opposite. They find that there's nothing there. Once again, the positive is looking for the negative to find balance. It finds that it's illusory, and vice versa, negative to positive. Everything contains its opposite. So what you deem something to be, once it's pursued, once you involve yourself with it, you find that there's nothing there. Again, like the mirage. You find it's the opposite. Embedded in every sensual object is its obsolescence, is its opposite. So the sattvic person, a person in proper sattva, shuddha sattva, they realize that all of this activity in this world is just a wild goose chase, because there's nothing there once you get into it. You deem something to be what it is. It's constantly changing. It's got no reality in and of itself. Like a light, like a bright light, without light, there's only darkness. You cannot see. But too much light, You bring yourself very close to the sun, you won't be able to see anything either. Too much light, the brightest light will blind you, just as much as will the darkest dark. They're opposites, but they're doing the same thing. Or the coldest cold. What's the opposite of the coldest cold? It's the hottest hot. You put your hand on a block of ice, what's going to happen? It'll destroy your skin cells, right? Put your hand on the hot fire, it will do the same. They're both opposites, but they're having the same effect. So, one can pursue what they deem to be something, go in search of light or in search of dark, they'll find the opposite there. Embedded in everything is its opposite. So a sattvic person, because they have a balance of the opposites, they realize this. They don't go chasing this balance, this pursuit. They don't go wallowing in the negative or wildly running after the optimistic, the goals, the so-called offerings of this world. They have a balance. Another way of looking at it, this desire of the senses to engage with the objects and find satisfaction, is an example I like to give of like an ice cream on a summer's day. A person, will have one ice cream and then they may go on for seconds. It's a good ice cream. The first ice cream will, on a scale of enjoyment, will be at a certain level. The next ice cream may not be quite there. The third ice cream will certainly not be producing the enjoyment that the first ice cream did. The fourth ice cream may not be offering up any pleasure at all. What about a fifth ice cream? We've gone from a pleasurable experience to something negative. We've gone from positive to negative. It's the same act of ice cream going into the mouth. It's the same person. It's the same product. It's the same meeting of the two. But it's gone from positive to negative. That's the nature of this world. It goes from positive to negative, negative to positive, positive to negative. You chase one, you get the other. You get etc. like this. So, oscillating between tamagun and rajagun. And if one can find a balance of sattvagun, then one realizes that everything that is related to exploitation, in other words, to trying to find happiness through an interfacing of the senses, one's body with the outside world, body and mind, the mind has subtle senses as well, with the outside world, will only get its opposite. And once you realize that, Hare Krishna, once you realize that, then you can finally grow up in this world. That's when maturity in this world begins. That's when one can stop being subject to the negativities of the world, but also not subject to the positivities of the world. Realizing that one is leading to the other. They're cyclical. So one can find a balance from which they can transcend this. And that is the balance, sattvic balance, that the mind needs to be in order to activate the spiritual process. So devotees who have achieved this balance as an actual point of maturity, where one can look and find and see the outside world, all its inhabitants, its population, are either enamored with what the world has to offer, or experience the anxieties and the sufferings that the world also has to offer. The duality of positive and negative, and as they change from one to the other, in an eternal, potentially eternal cycle. Chasing positive, you get negative. From the negative, you can move out and get positive. Once you've experienced enough negative, once that karma has been extinguished, then you can jump back into the positive and back to the negative. And this can go on a bit like a yo-yo. Like a yo-yo, the yo-yo toy, right? Goes up and it goes down, goes up and it's down. So the positive is considered when one goes up. Yeah, I'm having fun now. There's never any satisfaction, because embedded in that fun is its opposite. By the very nature of this world, the opposite is present in every object. So one can go up to the status of the, you could say the most powerful or the primordial being in any given universe. It's known as Brahma in Sanskrit. And then one can go right down from Brahmalok, right down into the Tala planets, like subterranean, lower planets of consciousness. And then back up again, like a yo-yo. Deep into the negative, deep into the positive, high into the positive, deep into the negative. So not just in one's life one can experience it, but over the course of multiple lives, one can go up and down, up and down. So people, when a devotee surveys the outside world, they see this duality in operation. They see this wild goose chase of people chasing pleasure, experiencing pain for a short while, running away from the pain, finding a little bit of pleasure again, and then descending back into the negative. It's inevitable. Now, the frequency or the speed of the oscillation differs, as in someone may be Brahma for the lifetime of Brahma, so many trillion years. But it's not eternal. But generally, Brahma is an exceptional position. Generally, the frequency of oscillation between pleasure and pain is much more rapid. But someone may have a lifetime of pleasure, relatively speaking. And others may look at them and go, wow, this world perhaps does have something to offer. But then, by its very nature, they must experience its opposite. Up and down, whether it be one life of pleasure, one life of not so pleasurable, a mix, whatever the case. So a devotee looks out and he sees that the whole environment and all the people populating the environment are subject to this up and down, pleasure, pain, positive, negative, oscillation, on and on, throughout their lives, alternating between lives, whatever the case may be. It's an unsatisfying alternating between positive and negative. And for someone, devotee who's achieved a certain position of understanding, they see it as like children playing in the sandpit. There's no maturity there. Like a child will be taking their play in the sandpit very seriously. And if you observe children playing, they're laughing one minute and they're crying the next. And that is how a devotee sees the so-called grown-ups, regardless of how competent or powerful or sophisticated or intelligent they may seem. It's like a child playing in the sandpit. They're on top of the world one minute, and they're crying the next. Really, that's how it's seen. Regardless of how well they seem to be managing their existence in the world, how competent they are, how wealthy they are, how well they can play the game for a short few decades before they die. For a devotee, it's like a child in the sandpit. And sometimes non-devotees, and that is why devotees often they keep separate. They can't, it's like an adult an adult cannot go and play with children in the sandpit and really take it seriously. They may, for the children's sake, go and play with them, right? But they cannot emotionally, unless they failed to mature and they're still mentally a child, they cannot emotionally enter into those games and fully subjectively experience it. Only the child can do that. So the devotee sees it like that, like child's play. All of the objectives that people take so seriously, a business person taking their money chasing so seriously, this is business, this is important business. Politicians ranting into the camera, we've got to change, we've got to get these guys out of power and take care of this country. We've got to rebuild this country, make it great again. Everyone's, yeah, let's do it. Taking all of this stuff so seriously. It's like a child building their castle in the sandpit and taking it all very seriously. And then another child comes and knocks it over and, really, their guy gets kicked out of power and they're all, oh my God, no, he's taking over, now we're going to have to leave the country. It's all child's play to a devotee. What 99.99% of the population lives and dies for and takes so seriously, the devotee sees as child's play. And of course the consequence of this is that the devotee wants to remain separate. He doesn't want to engage or interface with the children unless it's for the benefit, the upliftment of the children. Because he can't engage with the children He can't subjectively, or she, subjectively go out there and play this silly sandpit game. It doesn't work anymore. They've grown up into an adult. They're living the sattva gun. From that sattva gun perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to be a devotee. Any person sort of living sattva gun, whether they have a theistic conception or not, will, to various degrees of realization, have the same perspective. But the problem sometimes is that when a devotee, when someone who is engaged in these sandpit games meets someone who seems to maybe look like them or be them, a human being in this world, but not playing their games, it can become quite unnerving. Because if someone's not playing your game, you have no control over them. If someone's playing your game, you can manipulate them. They're subject to all the same desires, hopes, and fears that you are. And if you think you can win in the game, if you've got your little technique to influence the game, whether it be through intimidation, seduction, cheating, money, whatever it might be, the tools people use to manipulate the game. If they meet someone that's not vulnerable to such manipulation, they're like, who are you? Go away. You're a threat to my world. You're not playing my game. In fact, you've got the ability to sabotage my game. My game can fall to pieces if I subscribe to your way of thinking, which is exactly what will happen. So people that are not playing the game, they can often be shunned by society. We're reading just recently in the morning classes of Haridas Thakur in Chaitanya Lila. And he's a prime example of a devotee not playing the game. And the Islamic authorities, they saw him as a great threat. He wasn't playing their game. So they had him beaten, really with the point of killing him. And he voluntarily ended up giving up his life. But just one poignant recent example. Jesus Christ, also a threat. They did away with him, not playing the game. So people that are moving out of this maya, this chasing of positive and negative, this like hamster wheel type reality. It's actually illusion, but people think it's reality. People that are moving out of that are often rejected by those that are still in it, because they still have faith in it. But someone who's beyond it, who has faith in something else, is actually a threat. That's why our Guru Srila, grandfather Guru Srila Sridhar Maharaj says that when devotees, their kirtan is like a clash with the environment. So kirtan, whether it be with instruments or whether it be talking about spiritual topics, is actually antithetical in nature to the Mayak environment. So in that sense it can be like a fight, because it's dismantling the sandpit games and it's presenting an adult reality, it's presenting something real. It's penetrating this veil of Maya, which has everyone hypnotized, chasing the mirage, playing the sandpit games, hamstering on the wheel, whatever metaphor you want to use. It's penetrating it, it's dismantling it. But the nature of ignorance is to protect itself. Whether it be tamagun or rajagun, which must oscillate with each other, it's to protect itself. So, to perpetuate itself. So those in tamagun or obsessed in rajagun, which are both just different phases of the same cycle from a devotee's perspective, they will reject the devotee because ignorance inside which they are living must protect itself. There is the Greek. Who is the original Greek philosopher? Well, one of the earlier ones, Socrates. Aristotle came later, I think. I'm not clued up on this, but I know a couple of names. So there was Socrates, and then Socrates, Plato, then Aristotle, I think. So Socrates' disciple, Plato, he was his chief disciple. He was speaking with one of his friends, perhaps is actually a relative of Socrates. So Socrates' chief disciple Plato was speaking with another philosopher, and they were coming up with this hypothetical scenario. Now, they were philosophers concerning themselves with existential questions. The nature of this world, is there meaning to it? How do we find happiness and purpose, etc.? These important questions. They were concerning themselves with these. So in the course of their discussions, they conjured this scenario where a group of people are living in a cave. And in this cave, they're all sitting in a row, fixed in a row, and they're facing the wall of the cave. And behind them is a fire in this cave. And the fire is casting their shadows onto the wall of the cave in front of them. And they've spent all of their life in this cave, in this position. So all that they know, their entire reality, are these shadows dancing on the wall of the cave in front of them. So Plato is talking with his friend, and they're discussing the possibility of someone from the outside world going into this cave and telling these people, look, there is a reality, there's a big world out there. There's a sun, there's a moon, there's people, there's colors, there's a kind of a sense of purpose. There's reality outside of this dark cave in which you're seeing just flickering shadows. So they were, while discussing this, they were saying, would it be advisable to do such a thing? Would it be safe to enter this cave and tell these people, come with me into the wonderful outside reality. Come and live a life. And they concluded that no, it would not be safe. It would be a very dangerous thing to do. Because this is an extreme example, but it's used to illustrate a very important concept, is that ignorance protects itself. Ignorance will protect itself. Because ignorance is fear-based, and it doesn't know what is good for itself.
Does it have to do also with the familiar? It's sort of like ignorance will recognize itself somewhere, and the change that would need to take place to realign is not welcome.
Yes. It's fear of change, fearful of anything but what it has, even though what it has is so limiting, so substandard, still, and not producing any happiness. It's so inadequate, but still, it's protecting itself. The nature of fear to shrink. Deep tamagun. So this cave example is, they wouldn't have used this terminology, but this is tamagun. And they concluded that it was unsafe. They concluded that you would probably get killed by these people. So, in their protection of their ignorance. So, ignorance will actually kill that which comes to remove its ignorance. That's the nature of the ignorance. And that is why devotees are often rejected by non-devotees. Because non-devotees, in that state of ignorance, do not know what is good for them. They're not able to appreciate something that will actually take them from one stage of consciousness to another. So they reject it out of ignorance, like the people in the cave. Rejecting that person would come to take their hand. Hey, I'll show you reality. In the Bhagavatam, there's a story which also illustrates this concept. When King Indra, the king of heaven, king of paradise, say, heaven, paradise. What would term paradise? So Indra is the king of paradise, and he is cursed to become a pig. Indra is cursed to become a pig. From the king of paradise, with all its enjoyments, he has to become a pig for a certain duration of time. So during this time, he has a pig wife and a pig family. And then when his time is up, Brahma comes. Brahma comes to bring him out, to release him from this curse. But when Brahma arrives, Indra as the pig is running. Brahma has come to return him, to release him from the pig body, return him to his status of the king of heaven, king of paradise. Yet he's running away from Brahma in fear. This person has come to take our bodies away. So although Brahma has come to deliver him from what is a very undesirable state of being, because that's tamagun, is running away from what is actually good for him, like the people in the cave rejecting what is actually good for them, like non-devotees rejecting those who come with spiritual knowledge. The same thing. So in that sense, the avoidance of tamagun and the avoidance of so-called rajagun is essential in the pursuance or the development of proper consciousness, of Krishna consciousness. Because both will oscillate. Positive and negative will oscillate. There may be a temporary enlightenment or a temporary optimism, temporary sense of enlightenment, but it always alternates with its opposite, with its counterpart, darkness, light alternating with darkness. So a balance of sattva gun is necessary in order to grow up and see that Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. See that all the ambitions and pursuits, everything deemed important and honorable and worthy in the outside world, is nothing but child's play in the sandpit. And from that perspective, with that mindset, if you see the world that way, back to your point, if you can see the world that way, from that platform, then spiritual growth can be made. And from that platform, the spiritual world begins to open up. It won't open up until the material world is rejected. But when I say rejected is a word that's like almost like you're running away. It's got some power over you and you're trying to push it away. But if you see it for what it is, then you can leave it behind and accept something else. And that is the beginning of the spiritual life. Rejecting the so-called good and the so-called bad. Sarvadhaman parityajya mamikam sharanam braja. So surrendering sarvadhaman, like what even you see might be good. Rajagun, those things of Rajagun are then generally considered good, dharma. But, and also, there's another verse, Bhagavad Bhakti Tar Sarvam Itruj Vidhirapi Kainkaryam Krishna Padaika Shratvam Sharanapati. So when one reaches that platform, then the positive, the spiritual side of that, is that one can see that everything that was previously deemed by one as worthy of pursuit, as worthy as giving purpose in life, all of that is actually properly satisfied with Krishna consciousness. Surrender, padaikashrayatvam, spiritual surrender. Ashraya means taking shelter. Padaikashrayatvam. Taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. Every conceivable objective of life, consciousness, is fulfilled. And Gurudev, Srila Bhaktisundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj has said that if there is one verse, only one verse, that you should keep in mind, it's this verse. Bhagavad Bhakti Tar Saravam, it's Yudhrija Vidhirapi, Kainkaryam Krishna Padaikashratvam Sharanagati. It's the definition of Sharanagati. But Sharanagati cannot happen if one is still under the influence of the attractions, if one is still playing in the sandpit, attracted by the games of the sandpit. That Kainkaryam Krishna Padaikashrayatvam Sharanagati will not take place. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I don't know its original source. I know it is spoken by my Gurudev. Its original source, it could be a Bhagavatam sloka. It could be. We'll look it up so we can know. It could be a Puranic, could be a Upanishadic sloka. Bhukti mukti spriha javat pisacha hridivartate tavad bhakti sukhasyatra. You know this one?
I got it somewhere, but I won't be able to find it now.
Okay. Tavad, you know this one too.
And you have the first two lines, the first line.
Bhukti mukti spriha javat pisacha hridivartate tavad bhakti sukhasyatra katam abhyudayo bhavet. That as long as there is still desire for bhukti and mukti, then the bhakti sukha syatra, the sukha, the happiness of bhakti, won't come into your life. So you'll seek your happiness elsewhere. Bhakti sukha syatra. Described as witches. Pisacha means a witch. Bhukti and mukti. Now mukti is a desire for just complete abnegation. That's also detrimental to bhakti. We haven't touched on that. We've simply touched on overcoming the play, the idea that play in this world, interaction in this world, interfacing of the body and the mind with the environment will produce happiness. And that is known as bhukti. That's bhukti. The Sanskrit word for it is bhukti. What we've been talking about, that every object of this world contains its opposite, so it cannot produce happiness. But the idea that it can produce happiness, and the pursuance of that idea, acting based on that belief, is called bhukti. So as long as that exists in one's consciousness, in one's heart, it's considered a witch. And the goddess of bhakti, happiness-producing bhakti, that will not live there. If you still want to go and play in the sandpit, then you can't really mature spiritually. If you still have desires to play with the children in the sandpit, you're still going to be subject to all the excitement of building the sandcastle and the disappointment when it gets pushed over, or all the fluctuations of happiness mixed with distress.
There's no happiness or distress in the spiritual world?
Not as we know it in this world. The distress, even the distress, so-called distress in the spiritual world, internally, it's happiness producing. So there's nothing undesirable in the spiritual world. The distress of the spiritual world is based on the love between Radha and Krishna. Ultimately, in the Vaishnava conception of bhakti, and engagement of individual jivas, like all of us, in that, is through service to Radharani. And so distress in that capacity is separation from the object of love, which is separation from Krishna. And that's known as vipralamba. And in the text Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's stated how vipralamba is externally produces distress and pain, but internally it provides the deepest happiness. So even what is considered unhappiness is at its inner core happiness producing. So there is no such thing as distress as we know it in that world. It is beyond the duality of happiness and distress. Although there may seem to be duality in the interaction between the Atma and the Supreme Soul, it is of a different nature. Everything is not subject to the frailties, the flaws and frailties of the Mayic domain. Any comments? Elaborations?
As
sometimes wonder, I understand Mahamaya is the concept of Lord Shiva. We know her as Parvati or Durga. I wonder about Yoga Maya. Who actually is she in the spiritual world?
She is the energy that provides for the play, for the lila, the play, the pastimes of the spiritual world. She allows for various, you could say,
My point is,
Maya
what is she known as?
Yoga Maya.
Yoga Maya, but any specific name she has, just like, Mahamaya has a name, Durga or Parvati. So who is Yoga Maya?
Mahamaya manifests in the form of Durga and Parvati.
Is it the same energy?
Yeah, well, do you know the answer to that question? Do you know the answer?
To my question?
Yes.
Why should I be asking you the first?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's rhetorical. Maybe you have some idea.
I mean, I always wonder, who actually is Yoga Maya? We understand Mahamaya is Parvati.
I understand what you're saying.
The concept of Lord Shiva.
Yes.
Yes, that's clear. What about Yoga Maya?
Well, it's said that Brinda Devi, Tulsi Maharani, she arranges for the play, for the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So she can be said to be acting in that capacity. Is there another name that can be, attached to a person, and they could be functioning as the Maya producing Devi, goddess of Goloka? I don't know. Perhaps our Guru Maharaj has touched on it. I imagine he has. But
eternally, yes, in the spiritual world, Yoga Maya. Eternally she is there.
Everything in the spiritual world is eternal. Yeah, the spiritual world is composed of the Swarup Shakti, as opposed to the Maya Shakti, has 3 categories. And Samvit is the what causes it to be eternal. Samvit, Sandini, and Hladini. Those are 3 categories of the Swarup Shakti, spiritual energy. And there's no entry of Mayak energy into that realm. So the first quality of Sandini is that it's eternal. Or Samvit is that it's eternal. So everything there is eternal, including that play and the person organizing that play. But the basic function of Yoga Maya is, not that this was your question, but the basic function of Yoga Maya is to enhance the play. So Yoga Maya causes someone to see Krishna as their child, for instance. That's the influence of Yoga Maya. In other capacities, Krishna is Bhagavan, right? But if Yasodhama sees Krishna as Bhagavan, then that spoils the rasa. That spoils the Vatsalya rasa. So she's tying him up with the rope, etc., all these pastimes, Damodar pastimes, numerous pastimes. That is done under the influence of Yoga Maya. All of these plays are pastimes, all this lila is conducted under the influence of Yoga Maya. So it's said that Brinda Devi arranges the pastimes. So part and parcel of arranging the pastimes would be producing a suitable veil of this Yoga Maya in order to facilitate the rasas needed for those pastimes. So in that way, we could say that Brinda Devi represents or facilitates such a function. But the personification of the pleasure-producing potency, of course, this Hladini Shakti, which is one of the triplicity of qualities of the Swarup Shakti, is Radharani. She is the personification of the pleasure-producing potency. So at the height of all the Swarup Shakti, the spiritual energy, the height of that is the Hladini, the pleasure-producing, and she is the personification of that.
Another question I hear that Radha and Krishna are one, but then I understand that Krishna is Vishnu Tattva and Radharani she is Shakti Tattva. So they actually have their own individual identity as well. When we hear that Radha and Krishna are one, so what do we understand by that? They are one.
Well, Radha and Krishna are one and different. So, according to the teachings of Mahaprabhu, then the reality is known as achintya beda abeda tattva. Tattva means as something is, a truth. And it is achintya beda abeda, one yet different. And in that capacity, it's kind of inconceivable. Because with our logic, we're unable to conceive how something is apparently contradictory. How can it be one yet different? So that's considered achintya. We may have ways of explaining it in terms of saying that, it's different in quantity, like a drop of ocean water compared to the ocean. There's ways of kind of trying to comprehend it, but ultimately how it functions is achintya. Just how identical and how separate is achintya. Maybe very close to identical and maybe very separate, like the conceptions of Madhvaracharya, as opposed to Shankara, for instance, and Ramanuja. They've got different conceptions of just how separate and how identical the soul is, the Atma is with the Paramatma, with Krishna. So Mahaprabhu's philosophy is achintya beda abeda. So in that conception, just how Radha and Krishna are one yet different, it's somewhat achintya, we can say. We're not trying to explain it logically. But that oneness and difference makes for the greatest interplay of love. Because loving attraction, opposites can attract, but also unity, similarities can attract. So when you have an interplay of both, then you have a comprehensive, holistic attraction. So it's one yet different. Radha and Krishna are one yet different. So although they are one, it says they are eternally separated. As the verse I quoted, I'm not sure you were here, Radha Krishna eka atma dui dehadari ananya vilasa rasa ashvadanakari. That Radha Krishna eka atma means one soul. Dui dehadari. Dui means two. Deha means bodies. Radha Krishna are one soul, but they've assumed two bodies. What for? Ananya vilasa rasa, to experience rasa, to experience happiness.
So you said one soul and two different bodies.
Yeah. This is the Chaitanya Charitamrita verse. Radha Krishna eka atma dui dehadari ananya vilasa rasa ashvadanakari. So in that sense, you can also say Mahaprabhu's philosophy of achintya beda beda is that all of the jiva souls are also one with God, but they're also separate. This is what it is, oneness yet separate. So it's the same concept, Mahaprabhu's teaching of achintya beda beda. And this makes for the bhakti. It's from this philosophical basis or theological basis that bhakti can flourish. Otherwise, there will not be full bhakti. There will be the Advaita of Shankara or the Dvaita of Madhva. Mahaprabhu doesn't subscribe to either. It's bhakti can flourish when there's unity and there's also diversity. Opposites attract, but also sameness attracts. So an interplay of both is the theological platform from which bhakti can flourish. And it's also the platform from which the unity and distinction of Radha and Krishna can be understood as well. I think it's time for arati now, isn't it?
Thank you.
Welcome. God.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Jai Paramahansa Parivraj Vichar Vivadis Parasita Bhakti Vimal Shad Maharaj Ki Chaitanya Saraswati Maharaj Haji Juni Ki Paramahansa Parivraj Vichar Vivadis Bhakti Swami Maharaj Ki Jai Vishnu Paramahansa Parivraj Vichar Vivadis Bhakti Swami Maharaj Ki Shri Purushottam Dan Ki Jai, all that sort of Jagannath Ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Vinyanashraya Shri Shringadev Ki Jai, Bhakti Prabhu Bhalad Maharaj Ki Jai, Maharaj Bhagavad Tamshit and Sarvamrita Ki Jai, Special Bhashta Brajasana Ki Jai, Akar Maharaj Shri Panimat Ki Jai, Shri Shakamat Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Sarvamrita Ki Jai, Shri Chaitanya Sarvamrita Chapter Ki Jai, Shri Vyakti Shakamat Ki Jai, Kosi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Sambar Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Jai Shri Namdi Swami Shri Bhakti Prapanat Parivrajam Shri Sriram Mahamahurti Ki Jai, Bhakti Krishna Prabhu Hari Sriram Mahamahurti Ki Jai, Jai Shri Bhakti Ranga Madhusudha Maharaj Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai.